Maria worked quickly. Her hands moved with the kind of speed that only came from years of practice. She had treated wounds on a dozen different worlds, in 100 different situations. But she had never treated an alien before. The Queen's blood was blue and glowed faintly in the darkness. Her skin was smooth and cool to the touch, like polished metal. Maria did not know alien biology, but wounds were wounds. She cleaned the cut, applied pressure, and used a special foam that would seal almost anything. "This will hold," Maria said. "But you need real medical care." The Queen nodded. She was watching Maria with those strange dark eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies inside them. "Your medicine is crude, but effective." "Crude works," Maria said with a small smile. Cole was standing by the door, listening to the sounds outside. The Gorax were getting closer. He could hear them cutting through the metal, the scraping sound of their tools against the crystal hull. They had maybe 5 minutes before the door gave way. "Danny," he said, "talk to me." Danny was hunched over a console, trying to make sense of alien technology. The symbols meant nothing to him, but some things were universal. Maps were maps. "I think I found the shuttle bay. 2 decks down, about 200 meters forward. But the corridors between here and there are full of them." "How many?" "I cannot tell. The sensors are damaged, but a lot. More than we can fight through." Cole had expected as much. 4 Marines against an unknown number of Korax, in tight corridors where they would be surrounded. The math did not work. It never worked. "There is another way," the Queen said. She had risen to her feet, moving carefully to avoid reopening her wound. Despite everything, she held herself like royalty. "I have abilities. Powers of the mind. I can hide us from them." Cole turned to look at her. "Hide us how?" "I can make them not see us, not hear us. To their senses, we will be invisible." She paused. "It is difficult. I am wounded. I cannot hold it for long. But it may be enough. Maybe enough." Greg spoke for the first time since they had boarded the ship. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Maybe is not very good odds." "No," the Queen agreed. "But they are the only odds we have." Cole thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Then he nodded. "We move in 1 minute. Stay close. Stay quiet. If the cloak fails, we fight." They gathered by the door. Maria helped the Queen stay upright. Danny checked his weapon one more time. Greg simply stood ready, his knife in one hand, his pistol in the other. The Queen raised her hands and closed her eyes. Cole felt something brush against his mind. It was warm and vast, like standing at the edge of an ocean. For a moment, he could see the ship the way she saw it. He could feel the Korax outside, cold spots in a warm world, moving and searching. Then the cloak settled over them like a blanket, and they became ghosts. They moved through the eternal dawn in silence. The corridors were dark and damaged, filled with debris and bodies. The Korax were everywhere, but they passed by without seeing. They turned their smooth faces toward the humans, seemed to sense something, then moved on. Cole walked at the front, his rifle raised. Every instinct told him to shoot, to fight, to do something. But he forced himself to stay calm, to trust the Queen and her strange power. She was struggling. He could see it in the way she moved, the way her hands shook. The blue blood was seeping through her bandages again. Whatever she was doing, it was costing her. They found survivors along the way. 3 Volanti crew members, hiding in a storage room. They were young, barely more than children by their species standards. Their eyes went wide when they saw the Queen, wider when they saw the humans. "Come with us," Illareth whispered. Her voice was strained, barely audible. "Stay close. Stay silent." The group grew to 8. 3 Volanti, 4 humans, and 1 Queen. They moved through the ship like shadows, avoiding the Corax by inches. Once, a warrior passed so close that Cole could have reached out and touched it. He held his breath and let it go by dot. They were 50 meters from the shuttle bay when Illareth collapsed. She went down without a sound, her legs simply giving out beneath her. Maria caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her gently. But the damage was done. The cloak vanished. For a moment, nothing happened. The Corax in the corridor ahead continued moving, unaware. Then slowly they stopped. Their smooth heads turned. They had felt something. Cole did not wait for them to figure out what. "Run!" he shouted. "Get her to the shuttle. I will hold them here. I will hold them here." Danny started to argue, but Maria was already moving, pulling the Queen up and dragging her forward. The Volanthi survivors helped, carrying their queen between them. Greg hesitated for just a second, met Cole's eyes, then turned and followed the others. Cole faced the corridor alone. The Corax came fast. They flowed out of the darkness like a black tide, all sharp edges and hunger. There were so many of them, more than he could count, more than he could fight. He raised his rifle anyway. "Come on then," he said quietly. "Let us see what you have got." The first Corax died 3 meters from him. The second and third died right after. Cole moved backward slowly, firing in controlled bursts, making every shot count. The corridor was narrow here, which helped. They could only come at him a few at a time, but they kept coming. And he was running out of ammunition behind him. He could hear the others reaching the shuttle bay. He could hear Maria shouting for everyone to get aboard. He could hear Danny calling his name, telling him to fall back. Cole kept firing. A Corax blade caught his arm, cutting through armor and flesh. He ignored the pain and put 3 rounds through its head. Another one grabbed his leg. He shot it point blank and kicked the body away. His rifle clicked empty. He dropped it and drew his pistol. 15 rounds. 15 Corax maybe, if he was lucky. He was not lucky. But he was stubborn. The pistol ran dry after 8 kills. Cole drew his knife and kept fighting. The Corax were on him now, too close for guns anyway. He stabbed and slashed and punched, doing everything he could to buy the others more time. A claw caught his chest. Another raked across his back. He felt ribs break, felt blood fill his mouth. The world was going dark at the edges, but he refused to fall. Danny appeared at his side out of nowhere. The young private was screaming something, firing his weapon into the mass of Corax. Greg was there too, his knife flashing in the darkness. "I told you to go," Cole shouted. "Shut up and move." Danny grabbed his arm and pulled. They ran. Cole did not know how his legs were still working, but they were. The shuttle bay was just ahead, the ramp still down, Maria waving at them frantically. They threw themselves aboard just as the Corax reached the door. Greg hit the close button and the ramp sealed shut. Claws scraped against metal, but they were safe. For now. Cole collapsed against the wall, his blood pooling on the deck. Maria was there immediately, her hands working, her voice calm even though her eyes showed fear. "Stay with me," she said. "Stay with me, Cole." He tried to answer, but the darkness was pulling him down. The last thing he saw before he passed out was the Queen, watching him with those strange star-filled eyes. Then there was nothing but black. Cole Bradley should have died. The doctor said it clearly, without any softening. The wounds he had taken would have killed anyone else. His chest had been torn open. His back had been slashed to the bone. He had lost more blood than the human body was supposed to hold. By every medical standard, he should have been dead before the shuttle even reached the Resolute. But his heart kept beating. His lungs kept breathing. Somewhere deep inside his broken body, something refused to give up. 3 weeks passed. Cole remained unconscious, his body fighting a war that no one could see. Maria barely left his side. Danny came every day, sitting in the corner and talking about nothing, just so there would be a human voice in the room. Greg came too, though he never said anything. He just stood by the door, watching, waiting. And the Queen came most of all. Ylireth had her own room on the Resolute, a small space that had been quickly converted from storage. The 3 Volanthi survivors stayed with her, helping her heal, helping her plan. There was so much to do, reaching out to surviving colonies, organizing what remained of her people, beginning the long process of rebuilding. But every morning and every evening, she came to sit beside Cole's bed. She did not know why. He was just one soldier among many. He was not special by human standards, not a leader or a hero. He was simply a man who had made a choice. "Why do you keep coming?" Maria asked her one evening. The medic was tired, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "You have 1,000 things to do. Your people need you." "I am trying to understand," Ylireth said. Her voice was thoughtful, distant. "My people have lived for thousands of years. We have powers that seem like magic to younger species. We built an empire that spanned the stars. And we fell in 6 months." She looked at Cole, at his scarred face and broken body. "This man has lived for 34 years. He has no special abilities. He came from a species that has barely left their home world. And when he saw someone in danger, he did not hesitate. He did not calculate the odds. He simply acted." Maria was quiet for a moment. "That is just who Cole is. Is it just him? Or are all humans like this?" Maria thought about the question. She thought about the 11 Marines who had volunteered for a suicide mission. She thought about Captain Ortega, who had turned her ship toward danger when running was the smart choice. She thought about herself, staying awake for days to keep one man alive. "Not all of us," she said finally, "but enough of us. When things are worst, when everything seems hopeless, we find people who step forward. It is not logical. It is just what we do." Ylireth nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand something about these humans. They were not strong like her people. They were not ancient or wise or powerful. But they had something else. A stubbornness that went beyond reason. A refusal to accept the impossible. On the 19th day, Cole opened his eyes. It happened suddenly, without warning. One moment he was unconscious. The next his eyes were open and he was trying to sit up. Maria pushed him back down gently, tears streaming down her face. "Easy," she said. "Easy. You are safe. We made it." Cole's voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "The Queen? She is fine. You saved her." Cole's eyes closed again, and for a terrible moment Maria thought he had slipped back into unconsciousness. But he was just relieved. The tension left his body, and something like peace crossed his face. "Good," he said. "That is good." He slept for 2 more days, a natural sleep this time. When he woke again, he was stronger. Still weak, still broken, but alive. Against all odds, against all reason, alive. Ylireth was there when he woke the 2nd time. She was sitting in the chair beside his bed, watching him with those eyes full of stars. "Hello," Cole said. His voice was still rough, but there was humor in it. "Did I miss anything?" "You almost died," Ylireth said. "Many times. That happens." Cole tried to smile and winced at the pain. "Sorry about your ship. And your planet. And everything. You are apologizing to me?" Ylireth shook her head in disbelief. "You nearly gave your life to save mine, and you are apologizing. Seems polite." The Queen laughed. It was a strange sound, musical and sad and surprised all at once. She had not laughed in 6 months. "Sergeant Bradley," she said, "my empire is destroyed. My homeworld is ash. The Corax will return to finish what they started. I have no fleet, no army, no hope. She paused. But I have seen what one human can do. I have watched you stand alone against impossible odds, not for glory or reward, but simply because someone needed help. She leaned forward, her expression intense. I want to see what humanity can do together. I want to build an alliance. Your people and mine. Together, perhaps, we can do what neither could do alone. Cole was quiet for a long moment. This was beyond anything he had expected. He was just a sergeant, just a soldier. He followed orders and did his job. He was not a diplomat or a leader, but he understood something important. The galaxy was changing. The Korax were coming. Hiding was not an option. I am just one guy, he said. But I know people who can make that happen. Captain Ortega, Earth Command. They will listen. Will they help? Cole thought about his species. All their flaws and failures. All their wars and mistakes. But also their courage. Their stubbornness. Their impossible ability to find hope when there was none. Yes, he said. I think they will. 1 year later, the first joint human Velanthi fleet gathered at the edge of Korax space. It was not a large fleet. Humanity was still young, still weak by galactic standards. The Velanthi were broken, scattered survivors of a fallen empire. But they were together. And together, they were something new. Cole stood on the bridge of the Defiance, the flagship of the combined fleet. His wounds had healed, mostly. He would carry scars for the rest of his life. But he was standing. Beside him stood Queen Elireth, no longer just the ruler of a fallen empire. She was the voice of a new alliance, a partnership between two species that should never have found each other. They are coming, she said, watching the sensors. The Korax fleet was vast, thousands of ships spreading across the void like a black tide. I know, Cole said. He felt fear, of course. Only a fool would not feel fear facing such a force. But he also felt something else. Determination. Hope. The knowledge that he was not alone. Are you afraid? Ilireth asked. Yes. Cole turned to look at her. But that does not matter. Someone needs help. We are going to give it. The Queen smiled. That strange, musical, beautiful smile. Together, she said. Together. The fleet moved forward into battle. Humanity had taken its first step toward becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Not the strongest species. Not the wisest or the most ancient. But something else. The species that came when you called for help. The species that fought when there was no hope. The species that refused to accept impossible odds. The humans. And the universe would never be the same. The attack came without warning. Danny was doing his morning exercises when the Crimson Dawn shook violently. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Red lights flashed in his cell. He heard distant explosions and the sharp crack of weapons fire. Through the barrier, Danny saw crew members running past. Their faces showed something he had never seen on a Velthri before. Fear. A young warrior stumbled past his cell, clutching a wounded arm. Danny recognized him as Kethra, the one who had watched him do handstands. What's happening? Danny called out. Kethra's translator crackled. Raiders. Velkoth faction. They want the ship. Another explosion rocked the corridor. The lights flickered and died. When they came back on, the barrier in front of Danny's cell was gone. He was free. Danny stood there for a moment, looking at the empty space where the barrier had been. He could run. He could find an escape pod. He could leave this ship and these aliens behind and try to make his way back to Earth. Instead, he thought of golden eyes and a voice that called him strange. Damn it, he muttered, and ran toward the sound of fighting. The Crimson Dawn was in chaos. Bodies lay in the corridors, both Velthri and raiders. The raiders wore black armor, and their eyes glowed red instead of gold. They fought with brutal efficiency, cutting down anyone in their path. Danny moved through the ship like a ghost. He had no weapon, but he didn't need one. He came up behind raiders and used their own momentum against them. He grabbed fallen weapons and fired them until they were empty. He did things that his old Marine instructors would have been proud of, but he wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for her dot. He found Jivara on the command deck. She was surrounded by 3 raiders, her back against the wall. Her armor was damaged, a large section torn away from her side. Blue-silver blood leaked from a wound beneath her ribs. She held a blade in one hand, but her movements were slow and weak. "Commander!" Danny shouted. Jivara's eyes went wide when she saw him. "Human? You should have escaped. Why are you here?" Danny didn't answer. He grabbed a metal rod from the floor and charged at the raiders. The fight was brutal and fast. Danny took hits that would have dropped a normal man. A blade sliced across his arm. A fist cracked against his jaw. But he kept fighting, kept moving, kept pushing forward until all 3 raiders lay unconscious on the floor. He turned to Jivara. She had slid down the wall, her hand pressed against her wound. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. "You're hurt," Danny said, kneeling beside her. "It is nothing," she whispered. "I have had worse." "That's a terrible lie." Danny looked at her wound. The plasma burn was deep and ugly. She needed medical attention, but the ship's medical bay was probably destroyed or overrun. "We need to get you somewhere safe." He lifted her carefully, one arm under her shoulders and one under her knees. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe adrenaline was making him stronger. Either way, he carried her through the damaged corridors, away from the fighting until he found a small emergency shelter. The shelter was cramped and dark, lit only by dim emergency lights. It had basic supplies, some bandages and water, but nothing that could really treat her injury. Danny sat Jivara down gently on the floor. "Let me see the wound." "You should escape," she said again, her voice weaker now. "Leave me. Save yourself." Danny looked at her with an expression she couldn't understand. "That's not how this works. Not for me." He examined her injury as best he could. The plasma burn had gone through her armor and scorched the skin beneath. It wasn't fatal, but it was serious. The wound needed to be cleaned and bandaged properly. "Your armor," Danny said. "I need to remove it to treat the wound." Jivara's entire body went stiff. Her skin, already pale from blood loss, flushed a deep violet color. Her golden eyes went wide with something that looked almost like panic. "No," she whispered. Danny frowned. "No? You're bleeding. I need to help you. You don't understand." Her voice was barely audible. "Among my people, to be seen without armor it is intimate, sacred. We only reveal ourselves to family, to bonded mates, never to strangers." Danny sat back, processing this information. The Velthari were warriors who wore armor like a second skin. To them, removing it was like removing their identity, their protection, their dignity all at once. "Okay," he said slowly. "I understand. But you're still going to die if I don't treat that wound." Jivara closed her eyes. Her breathing was getting more shallow. Danny watched her struggle with herself, with her culture, with everything she had been taught since childhood. "Turn around," she finally said. "Face the wall." Danny nodded and turned his back to her. He heard the sounds of her removing the damaged sections of her armor, the clicks and hisses of fasteners releasing, the soft whisper of material sliding away from skin. "There is water in the emergency kit," she said, "and bandages. I need you to bring them to me. But do not look." Danny found the supplies by touch, keeping his eyes firmly on the wall. He held them out behind him and felt her take them from his hands. For a few minutes, There was only the sound of her breathing and the quiet work of cleaning a wound. Danny waited, patient and still. Then his foot slipped. Thought it was an accident, a tiny movement caused by the unstable floor. But it made him turn his head just slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of her reflection in the polished metal wall. He saw blue-gray skin, smooth and luminous in the dim light. He saw the curve of her shoulder and the graceful line of her neck. He saw something beautiful and vulnerable and unlike anything he had ever witnessed. And then she saw him seeing her. "Don't watch, human," HFY whispered frantically, her voice a mix of embarrassment and something else entirely. Her skin flushed that deep violet again, spreading from her face down to her shoulders. Danny immediately clamped his hands over his eyes. "Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It was an accident, I swear. Just stay facing that wall. Do not move. I won't. I promise." There was a long pause. Danny heard her shifting, heard the soft sounds of bandages being applied. His heart was pounding in his chest, though he couldn't quite say why. "You saved my life," HFY said quietly. "You could have escaped. You could have left me to die. Why did you stay?" Danny kept his hands over his eyes. "Because you're not just my captor anymore. I don't know what you are, but I couldn't leave you." Another long pause. "I am finished," she finally said. "You may turn around." Danny lowered his hands and turned slowly. HFY had wrapped herself in an emergency blanket, covering everything but her face and hands. She looked exhausted and pale, but she was alive. The wound was bandaged properly. "Thank you," she said. The words seemed to cost her something. Danny sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "You're welcome." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the distant sounds of battle dying down. Eventually, HFY spoke again. "What you saw," she said carefully. "Among my people, it would create an obligation. A bond." Danny looked at her. "What kind of bond?" HFY's golden eyes met his. In them, Danny saw 1,000 emotions he couldn't name. "That depends," she whispered, "on what we choose to make of it." Outside, the sounds of fighting had stopped. The Crimson Dawn had survived. And in that small, cramped shelter, something new had begun to grow between a human prisoner and a Valkyrie commander. Something neither of them had expected. Something neither of them could stop. The story spread through the Crimson Dawn like fire. The human had saved the commander. The prisoner who should have escaped had instead run toward danger. He had fought 3 raiders with nothing but his hands and a metal rod. He had carried HFY to safety and tended her wounds when any other creature would have left her to die. The warriors who had once looked at Danny with curiosity now looked at him with something closer to respect. Kethra, the young warrior who had watched Danny do handstands, began leaving small gifts outside his cell. A better blanket, sweeter food, a translation device of his own. "You honor our commander," Kethra said. "So we honor you." Danny tried to explain that he hadn't done anything special, that any decent person would have done the same. But the Valkyrie didn't understand. In their culture, prisoners escaped when they could. Enemies were enemies. The idea that someone would risk their life for a captor was beyond their experience. Only HFY seemed to understand. She visited him every day, as she had before. But things were different now. The formal distance between them had shrunk. Sometimes she sat beside his cell for hours, talking about nothing and everything. She told him about her childhood on the refugee ships, about the mother who had named her Z, about the father she never knew, and Danny told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the cities that never slept and the small towns where everyone knew your name. He told her about his friends back home, about the life he had left behind when he took his little cargo ship into space. Do you miss it? Jivara asked one evening. Your home world? Danny thought about the question carefully. I used to. Every day. But lately, he looked at her, at those golden eyes that had become so familiar. Lately, I'm not so sure. Jivara didn't respond, but the violet flush on her cheeks spoke volumes. The other commanders in the Velthari fleet were not pleased. Word had reached them about the human on the Crimson Dawn, about his impossible strength and stubborn spirit, about the way Commander Jivara looked at him when she thought no one was watching. He should be in a proper detention facility, Admiral Gormak said during a fleet-wide transmission. Not treated like an honored guest. Jivara kept her expression neutral. The human has proven useful. His knowledge of human combat techniques has improved our training programs. And what else has he proven useful for? Another commander asked, his voice thick with meaning. Jivara's eyes flashed dangerously. Choose your next words carefully. The transmission ended shortly after, but Jivara knew the talk wouldn't stop. Her interest in the human was becoming noticed. In a culture where warriors married for strategic alliances and political power, her attachment to a prisoner was seen as weakness. She should have cared. She should have pulled away, put distance between herself and Danny, remembered her duty to her people. Instead, she found herself walking to his cell again that night. Danny was waiting, as he always was. Rough day? How can you tell? He smiled. You get this little wrinkle between your eyebrows when you're stressed. Right there. He pointed to his own forehead. Jivara touched the spot he indicated. No one had ever noticed such things about her before. The fleet is asking questions about you, she said. About us. Danny's smile faded slightly. Is that a problem? It could be. My position, my command, everything I've worked for. It could all be at risk. There was a long silence. Danny looked at her with those strange brown eyes that saw too much. Then maybe I should stop being a problem for you. Jivara's hearts clenched. What do you mean? I mean, maybe you should send me to that detention facility. Or put me on a transport back to Earth. Whatever makes things easier for you. She should have agreed. It was the logical choice, the safe choice. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. I don't want you to go. Danny stared at her. You don't? No. The word felt like stepping off a cliff. I don't know what this is, what we have, but I don't want it to end. Before Danny could respond, an alert sounded through the ship. A transmission was coming in, priority one, from an unexpected source. Earth. They gathered on the command deck to receive the message. Danny stood beside Jivara, no longer a prisoner in chains, but something undefined and new. The face that appeared on the view screen was human. An older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, wearing the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. I am Ambassador Patricia Lane, she said. We have been trying to reach you for some time. We know you have one of our citizens aboard your vessel. Jivara straightened. Lieutenant Danny Cole is under my protection. We're aware. Ambassador Lane's expression was unreadable. We're also aware that he saved your life during a recent attack. Interesting behavior for a prisoner. Danny stepped forward. Ambassador, save it, Lieutenant. I've already heard the reports. Lane's eyes moved between Danny and Jivara. The Galactic Confederation has finally decided that humanity is worth talking to. They're sending an envoy to negotiate our entry into their little club. And apparently, they want to meet the human who impressed the Velthari. The news hit Danny like a wave. This was what humanity had dreamed of for decades. First contact, real contact with the wider galaxy. And somehow, he had played a part in making it happen. But all he could think about was the woman standing beside him. When? He asked. 2 weeks. The envoy will come to the Crimson Dawn. Try not to start any more fights before then. The ambassador's face softened slightly. "And Danny? Your mother says hello. She's proud of you." The transmission ended. The command deck buzzed with activity as officers prepared for the historic meeting. But Danny and Jivara stood still, caught in their own private moment. "This is good news," Jivara said carefully. "For your people? Yeah." Danny's voice was hollow. "Great news. The envoy will probably want to take you home. Back to Earth. You'll be a hero." Danny turned to look at her. Really look at her. At the sharp angles of her face, the shimmer of her blue-gray skin, the golden eyes that had become more familiar than any sight on Earth. "What if I don't want to be a hero?" he said quietly. "What if I want something else?" Jivara's breath caught. "Danny, these past weeks, trapped on this ship with you, they've been the strangest of my life, but also the best." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand found hers, and he marveled at how right it felt. "I'm not ready to lose this. To lose you. But you're home. Your people. Your mother. I know. And I'll miss them. But home isn't just a place, E. It's where you feel like you belong." He squeezed her hand gently. "And right now, standing here with you, I feel like I belong." Jivara's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears, if Valtteri could cry. "You would stay?" she whispered. "For me?" Danny smiled, that warm human expression that made her heart race in a heartbeat. Outside the viewport, stars burned in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting. And somewhere closer, a future was taking shape that neither of them could have imagined. But for now, in this moment, a human and a Valtteri stood hand in hand, and that was enough. The Galactic Confederation envoy arrived exactly on schedule. Their ship was enormous and gleaming white, covered in symbols from a dozen different species. It docked with the Crimson Dawn slowly, carefully, like a creature afraid of startling its prey. Commander Jivara stood at attention in the docking bay, her officers arranged behind her in perfect formation. She wore her finest armor, polished until it shone. Every detail was perfect. Every regulation followed, except for one thing. Danny Cole stood beside her, not as a prisoner, but as her equal. The envoy emerged from the airlock. There were 5 of them, each representing a different species of the Confederation. They were tall and short, scaled and furred, strange and wonderful. At their head was an ancient creature with silver skin and eyes like black pools, the speaker for the council. "We greet the Valtteri Empire," the speaker said, his voice resonating through the bay. "And we acknowledge the human presence among you." Jivara stepped forward. "The Crimson Dawn welcomes the Confederation. We are honored by your visit." The speaker's black eyes moved to Danny. "You are the human called Danny Cole, the one who fought without weapons, the one who saved his captor when he could have escaped." Danny straightened his back, trying to remember everything Jivara had taught him about diplomatic protocol. "That's me, sir. Curious." The speaker studied him like a scientist examining a new specimen. "We came expecting to find a primitive species, barely worthy of contact. Instead, we find something unexpected." "Humans are full of surprises," Danny said. The speaker made a sound that might have been laughter. "So it would seem." The negotiations began that afternoon. The Confederation wanted to know everything about humanity. Their technology, their history, their culture, their military capabilities. Ambassador Lane, who had traveled with the envoy, answered most of their questions. But the envoy kept returning to Danny, kept asking about his experiences aboard the Crimson Dawn. "You adapted quickly to Valtteri customs," the speaker observed. "You learned their language, their habits, their values. This is unusual for a captive species." Danny shrugged. "I was curious. And the Valtteri aren't that different from us, really. They value honor and strength and loyalty. Those are human values too. And yet your species has been isolated for your entire existence. How did you learn to understand those who were so alien to you? Danny thought about the question. He thought about the first days in his cell, watching the guards and learning their names. He thought about eating combat rations and doing push-ups and refusing to give up. He thought about Jivara, about her voice in the darkness, about her hand in his. I think, he said slowly, humans are good at finding common ground. We look at someone different, and we don't just see the differences. We see the things we share, the things that make us the same. The speaker was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Ambassador Lane. Your species is young and small and weak by galactic standards. You have no great fleets, no advanced weapons, no ancient history. By every measure, you should be dismissed as insignificant. Ambassador Lane's expression didn't change, but you have produced this one. The speaker gestured at Danny, a single human who walked into captivity and turned enemies into allies, who showed courage without violence and strength without cruelty. If your species can create such individuals, then perhaps you have something worth contributing to the galaxy after all. The negotiations continued for several days. There were arguments and compromises, demands and concessions. But in the end, humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Confederation. They would have observers and ambassadors, trade routes and cultural exchanges, and they would need someone to represent them among the Velthari. I volunteer, Danny said. Everyone turned to look at him. Ambassador Lane raised an eyebrow. The speaker tilted his ancient head. You wish to remain here? The speaker asked. Away from your home world? Away from your own kind? I wish to serve as a liaison officer, Danny said carefully, using the official terminology he had practiced with Jivara the night before. Stationed permanently aboard the Crimson Dawn, to help build understanding between humans and Velthari. Ambassador Lane studied him for a long moment. And your personal reasons? Danny glanced at Jivara, who stood rigid and still at the edge of the room. Those are personal. The ambassador sighed. I had a feeling you'd say something like that. She shook her head. Your mother is going to be furious. She understand. She really won't. But there was a hint of a smile on Lane's face. Very well, Lieutenant Cole, or should I say Ambassador Cole. Your request is approved. The envoy departed the next day, taking with them the seeds of a new alliance. Ambassador Lane promised to return with trade delegations and cultural missions. The speaker promised that humanity's voice would be heard in the council chambers, and Danny stayed. That evening, after the ceremonies and farewells were finished, he found Jivara alone in the observation deck. She stood before the viewport, watching the stars, her armor gleaming in the dim light. You stayed, she said without turning around. I told you I would. I thought. Her voice caught. I thought when the time came, you would change your mind. That Earth would call you back. That you would realize this was all a mistake. Danny walked up beside her. Their reflections stared back at them from the dark glass, human and Velthari side by side. It's not a mistake, he said. You're not a mistake. Jivara finally turned to face him. Her golden eyes were bright with emotion. My people will talk. They will say I have weakened, that I have betrayed my duties for a human. Let them talk. The road ahead will not be easy. There will be challenges, obstacles, enemies who want to tear us apart. We'll face them together. She studied his face, searching for doubt or fear or hesitation. She found none. You are certain? She whispered. Completely certain? Danny smiled. In my whole life, I've never been more certain of anything. Slowly, deliberately, Jivara reached up and began to remove her armor. Not just the outer plates, but all of it. Every piece, every layer, every protection she had worn her entire life. Danny watched her, understanding the significance. Among her people, this was the ultimate act of trust. To stand unarmored before another, completely vulnerable, completely exposed. When she was finished, she stood before him in simple cloth, her blue-gray skin luminous in the starlight. She looked smaller without her armor, more fragile, but also more real, more beautiful, more herself than he had ever seen her. "This is me," she said quietly. "All of me. No titles, no rank, no walls between us." Danny reached out and took her hand. Her skin was smooth and warm beneath his fingers. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Jivara's eyes widened. Among her people, such words were not said lightly. They carried weight, meaning, promise. "You honor me," she whispered. "I love you," Danny replied. "That's the human way of saying it." She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Then teach me," she said. "Teach me the human ways." And there, in the observation deck of the Crimson Dawn, surrounded by 1,000,000,000 stars, a human and a Velthari warrior began to write a new story together. A story about courage and kindness, about finding home in unexpected places, about the strength it takes to be vulnerable and the power of choosing love over fear. Years later, historians would write about this moment. They would call it the beginning of a new era, the spark that ignited a lasting peace between two species. They would analyze the politics and the strategies and the diplomatic implications, but they would miss the most important part. They would miss the way Danny smiled when Jivara laughed, the way she leaned into him when she was tired, the way they learned each other's languages and customs and dreams, building a bridge between worlds one day at a time. They would miss the simple truth that changed everything, that sometimes the greatest strength isn't found in weapons or warships or warriors. Sometimes it's found in a single human who refused to let fear win, and in the Velthari commander who was brave enough to love him back.